Now, throughout the Snare Saturday series, the drums are from my personal collection, which means they're either from Ludwig, or they're drums that I have helped build, or I've built myself. Maybe even a couple drums that I decided to modify. So in this Snare Saturday video, you're gonna get the chance to see an experiment that we did at MCD to see what would happen if we put tambourine jingles into a snare shell. Yo, what is going on everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video, I'm gonna be showing you a MCD steam bent solid cherry snare drum that we decided to put tambourine jingles into. When we decided to build this drum, secondary snare drums were usually higher in pitch, and popcorn snare drums were all the rage. So we thought to ourselves, well, what if we built a popcorn snare drum, but make it a little bit different by putting tambourine jingles into it? What else are you going to do when you're a custom drum builder and you have to display some drums at the NAMM show? Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. So for those who might not be familiar with the backstory with MCD, which stands for Master Crafted Drums, it's a custom drum boutique based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it specializes in steam bent solid shell drums. Now, one of the last years that MCD displayed at the NAMM show, they showcased my custom steam bent solid maple drum kit. Now with this kit, it was built for me when I was playing in rock bands. So we have an 18 by 22 kick drum that's depth by diameter, and it had a double wide front hoop on it. Then for the toms, it was an 8 by 10 and an 8 by 12 rack tom, a 12 by 14 floor tom, and a 14 by 16 floor tom. Once again, depth by diameter. Now the problem was that I was playing jazz gigs as well, mainly combo gigs for background music for restaurants or anything of that nature. And you can't really roll up to a jazz gig with drums that size. I mean, you can, it's just not going to sound that good. So we decided to make an 18-inch mahogany bass drum. That way, if I ever played a jazz gig, I'd had the 18-inch bass drum, the 10-inch rack tom, and the 14-inch floor tom. And this drum kit kept building and building and building, and eventually Mike Mastropietro, the owner of MCD, said, hey, I have this idea. I think we should make a jungle snare drum, and let's go ahead and take a tom shell, something like a 6 by 10, and rather than making it into a popcorn snare, let's drill slots in the middle of it and put tambourine jingles into it. So that's exactly how this drum came about. The concept behind it is that since this is a steam bent solid cherry wood drum, cherry has a very bright characteristic to it. So making it into a popcorn snare, you're getting the best of both worlds. To make it a little bit interesting, however, we decided to add tambourine jingles to it. So then that way, as you play rim shots and hit the drum, the tambourine jingles actually start to vibrate and move around within that chamber and just give you a little bit of a different sound. So let's go ahead and talk about the specs of this drum. Like I mentioned before, it is a steam bent solid cherry shell, and it has maple reinforcement rings on the top and the bottom. This shell is 6 inches deep by 10 inches in diameter. Now, usually 10-inch drums, specifically rack toms, only have 6 lugs, 6 on the top and 6 on the bottom, giving you 12 lugs total. And since this was an add-on for my custom MCD kit, we decided to continue with the look and give it the same orange finish, as well as single-sided tube lugs that are 50% offset. Now, the drum has been drilled in the middle of the shell, 10 slots for us to put tambourine jingles into. Now, the cool thing is once we installed those tambourine jingles into the shell, they didn't get in the way of a rims mount. So we were able to put one of them on the drum. That way I could suspend the drum off of some kind of L-arm rather than using a snare stand. Rounding out the hardware on this drum, it was equipped with triple flange hoops on the top and the bottom, because like I've mentioned in earlier Snare Saturday videos, we would prefer to put triple flange hoops on drums. That way they could resonate, especially because we were building steam bent solid drums. Last thing we wanted to do is choke them out. Just like every other snare drum from MCD, it is equipped with a trick 3-positioned throw-off, and it had the modern day MCD logo engraved into it. Now, at the time of making this drum, nobody made a 10-inch snare side hoop, so we had to get a little creative. And what we decided to do is just drill 2 holes into the hoop. It's going to allow us to feed cord through it. That way we can use a snare throw-off and butt plate. And that's exactly what we did. Now for the snare wires, they are a set of World Max German snare wires. They were our preferred snare wires to use because you got a nice warm tone from them and they were really snappy. And World Max makes them for a 10-inch snare drum. So just like every other Snare Saturday video, I'm gonna play this drum through a few different tunings. Although when we all look at it, we're like, wait a minute, that thing probably only sounds good in a higher tuning. But we're gonna experiment and see what it sounds like. So I will start out in a low tuning and work my way up to a higher tuning. So enough of me talking, let's dive into playing. So for somebody like myself who prefers to play rim shots when they are hitting their snare drum, that's how you have to play this drum in order to get those tambourine jingles to move. And it's safe to say, regardless of tuning, you can get them to do that. Now, my personal opinion of the drum, although it is a cool look and it's supposed to be a unique sound, I think another layer of tambourine jingles would make it sound even better. That one row of jingles, although you can get them to make some noise if you hit the drum, in my opinion, they kind of get washed out by the snare wires. And there's plenty of space in the slots of the shell to put another layer of tambourine jingles. So all I'd have to do is just put a little rubber spacer in between those layers. That way they can resonate and jingle a whole lot more when I hit the drum. And that should give it a little bit more of that tambourine sound when I hit it. Now, ironically, I only thought of popcorn snares as being drums that you would crank up really high. But at that highest tuning, you can hear this drum is starting to choke out. Maybe that's because there are 10 slots through the middle of the shell which are acting like vents, or maybe it's because there's too much tension on the drum heads. But either way, it was starting to sound choked out, and surprisingly, this drum does kind of work in some different tunings. But either way, I would love to get your feedback and what you thought of this drum, so make sure that you leave it in the comment section below, letting me know. And I do know that I am using this as a primary snare. That was just for the sake of this video. But for me, if I was going to use this drum, it would be a secondary sound source. I don't think it would really be a good fit for a primary snare. But again, I'd love to get your feedback and what you thought. Now, if you have any other questions, like say maybe how we were able to install tambourine jingles into a snare drum, or any other question on the build process, or anything else you might want to know about the drum, feel free to put that in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to answer them. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see some of the earlier videos from the Snare Saturday series, I put a link to the playlist in the description below, and I'll also have it come up right here to make it a little bit easier for you. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the MCD Solid Cherry 6x10 snare drum with tambourine jingles installed into it. And until next time, see you later.